And we are off. So I have another tip for energy healing prepared for you guys today. And as with many of them, this was inspired by some of Terry O'Connell's work. And it's called the Seminal Moment. And it's a concept you're already somewhat familiar with, I would hope. That basically one of the core principles of digging that you guys have heard in different shapes and forms over and over is we don't want to spend a lot of time working on the surface. That once you find the surface issue, you then want to use that to dig down, to get to the root of the core of the issue. And Terry's metaphor she liked to use was that beliefs stack up kind of like a house of cards. That we'll get some more light on here. That it takes a while to put together a house of cards. You have to work very carefully. But once the house of cards is up, it only takes a moment to knock it down, which is if you pull out the card at the bottom, the foundation, then the whole thing collapses. And so th this is kind of a role of digging that we got all these beliefs stacked up like a house of cards. You could pull them off one at a time from the top. That would be kind of like building it in reverse. But that's a lot of extra time and work, and isn't it? You can just find the one at the bottom, yank it out, and the whole thing collapses with a little help from gravity and entropy. And so, of course, you understand that concept, I would hope, by the time you get to this group. I wanted to uh, put out there that one of the concepts you'll see inside the macros for those that have gone through that, it's in the appendix to the level two book, the Master Healer Intensive, is you'll see the phrase the seminal moment in time and space, or something very similar to that. And what we want to do is when we're working with something, especially if it's kind of big and difficult to work with, what we want to do is go back to what we call that seminal moment in time and space and dimensions just before the thing was created. And when you're able to do that, you can often experience a very powerful healing because it takes a lot less energy to stop something right when it starts versus later. And so the metaphor I'll use sometimes is anyone that's ever had a flood in their home knows it's a gigantic hassle. It's shocking how much damage a relatively small amount of water can do. And so imagine that that this actually happened to me once, that you're away for the weekend and the plumbing backs up and water starts overflowing out of your kitchen sink. Well, that sucks. If you leave on Friday and come back Sunday, the house has been flooding for 2 days. That's an effing nightmare. It's going to cost you a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of work to clean that up. But imagine if you could reach back through time and space and hit the faucet on Friday, or plug the sink, or call the plumber. In other words, it's much easier to solve the problem close to its source. This is why we have in medicine they have the saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so I just want to offer that this idea of going to the core at the beginning is really powerful, not just for stacking up beliefs, but if you look at, for example, how we work to release curses, that's kind of the concept we're using, this time manipulation. That the I have found one of the most effective ways to release a curse is to go back just before that seminal moment when it was taken on and simply shield, protect your client, or push away the curse. It's kind of like another great modern metaphor would be asteroids and comets that might hit the Earth. That could we move an asteroid or comet that was going to hit the Earth? The answer is yes, but only if we know about it months or years or decades in advance. That if we know it's going to hit the Earth and we can intercept it out by Saturn, a little bit of a push and it misses us completely. If we wait until that comet passes the moon, it's going to take so much energy to move it, we're going to get hit. Does that make sense? So I just want to, so with one of the ways, and I'll also say, not every curse or issue or trauma is this simple. Some of them will still be messy and require a lot of work. That's life. But what happens is, for example, when you pull out curses in the present, it's usually a lot of processing. Coughing is very common. And some of you guys may remember the story I'll sometimes tell in level two. It was one of Terry's practice groups where she was working to pull out kind of a pretty convoluted curse on someone. And as they were doing the healing, he started to have this almost uncontrollable coughing fit. And a couple people were like, Terry, should we call 911? Is he going to be okay? He was like coughing and yakking, and Terry's like, maybe. Let's see if he pulls out of it. And he did, but he was just coughing his lungs out for like 2, 3 minutes. And it was the craziest thing. There was this gray stain on her carpet where there was not one before. And so that was kind of the old way of pulling curses. It works. That's pulling it out in the present. What we found is you can often get a better result with a lot less effort and processing. You simply command to go back to the seminal point in time and space and dimensions just before the curse was accepted. And that is like averting the flood by turning off the faucet. Does that make sense? So if you're working with something complicated, this can be a good guideline. See if you can, because remember, we're not limited to the present tense in terms of sending energy. We can send energy anywhere we want. So if you find something that's messy, difficult, requires a lot of processing, sometimes if you can identify that seminal moment, do the healing there, then it kind of erases it from the timeline. And if you're really good, you and your client may completely forget there ever was a problem. So that's what I got prepared for you guys today. Does that make sense? Now, of course, this is just one more tip, right? Sometimes the seminal moment, you just can't get traction there. You got to do it in the present. So be it, right? But I remember after Terry discovered that and shared it with us, I don't remember anyone having a big mess of a process during a practice group, processing out a trauma or a curse or anything like that. And if you're using the macros, just so you know, you're already doing this to some extent, that it's all right there in the macros. When you do a heal, every time you do a healing, you're looking for that seminal moment. Every time you do a clear, you're looking for that seminal moment. So, but if you find this useful, you may find situations where this concept of go back, because again, we're not limited by time or space or dimensions here. Sometimes you do the healing now, sometimes you send the energy to the future, sometimes to the past, sometimes to a parallel reality. Don't be limited by any of that. Let the divine guide you to send it where it's going to go for the maximum leverage, the maximum effect with the minimum of effort and collateral damage. Cool? Cool. Any questions? Happy to answer them. Oh, since I was looking at my notes the whole time, I didn't realize that Tana, your face is going to be big on the video. So, yeah, no, I had my notes up on the screen I was reading from. So, that's okay. You can see me as a small talking head on the top. It's okay. I'm sure mo most of the YouTube audience would rather look at you anyway. So, that's cool. We're all good, you know. I would, given the choice, right? So, thank you for being my unwitting model. Yeah, if you're really good, we could like AI your lips in so it looks like you're speaking it. Yeah, that'd be cool. Any questions? No? Let's do questions on this topic first, then I'll turn off the recording for posterity. Then any questions you want, then we'll go to our breakout rooms.
I do have a question.
Yep.
You mentioned about the coughing as being part of process. There
Yeah.
are spells that can make people cough or sneeze.
Okay. That's
I've
fascinating.
seen this. Yeah, I've seen this in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that. That makes a lot of sense. It just curses in particular. I don't know why. Coughing it out seems to happen a lot.
Okay.
So if you're working with someone and you've cleared a bunch of stuff and they go into some gnarly coughing fit, you might have pulled a curse, you know? Doesn't really matter, just kind of interesting.
Okay.
But absolutely. So it's, when we're doing the work, the clearing, we're probably tickling the brain in a sense, the way a sound or a smell or something could. And who knows what kind of crazy stuff comes up there. Other questions about this stuff?
Yeah, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
Brent. I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned using the macros, that actually works. And should we set it like our own intention though before that to go back to a certain time and place or not?
Yeah. That again, if you're working with the macros, there's not as much need for it
Right.
because it's already built in. But some of you are using other systems and processes sometime. in which case, you might want to add this in explicitly. When I learned that the system from Terry, that everything was a whole bunch of long words and commands, and you had to remember to put it in. So, it's all in the back of the level two book if you guys are curious. So that's why I say there's not a lot of direct need for this. But sometimes you might send a healing explicitly to that seminal moment if you feel guided to.
Okay.
Because I think the intention and the focus does matter. In the, similar with muscle testing, that if someone's getting a kind of an unsure result, sometimes speaking it more loudly, more firmly, will get a better answer, right? If someone's all, I have a vow of poverty, and like, I don't know, I'm not getting it. No, say it, I have a vow of poverty, right? Say it loud with some emotion, like you really mean it. That will tend to trigger a better, a stronger response. So sometimes healing can be like that. You really emphasize something, put your focus on it, then it tends to get bigger, more powerful there.
I've got a question, Brent.
Yeah.
So when used to do your classic heal-a-thons
Hmm.
and heal like 50, 100 people all at once type of
Yep.
thing, were you going in really quick succession back to the seminal moment for each person?
Generally, what I do is I would witness in parallel. You can also witness in serial, it just takes longer. So if you have
Oh,
the abstract visualization capacity, which not everyone has, but it's not hard for me. Being a 3D game programmer, I wrote a 3D engine decades ago. That's pretty natural for me. So I just imagine everyone out there, wherever they are, and I see the beams of light going down, and I just witness it all in parallel.
and
It
then
would
do you
be it would be
also,
correct, just take longer if you wanted to do them one at a time. Okay, I'm doing John's healing. Okay, now it's Mary's healing. That wouldn't be wrong. It'd just be slow.
okay. And then when you're doing that all at once in parallel, are you also in parallel intending it to go back to the seminal moment?
I don't need to generally because if you're using the macros as they're written, that's already in there.
Okay.
So it's
So,
already in heal and
lot.
clear and all that.
Okay.
That's why I said great question. But there's not a lot of need to explicitly put it in if you're using the macros in the way I teach it. But every now and then there might be, or some of you might be integrating other methods or techniques or other things you've learned, and that's fine, right? And in which case, send it to the seminal moment. But great questions. Other questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
as regards to the healing in the future, as
Uh-huh.
you mentioned,
Yep.
just wondering, is that something you use like individually to prepare, for instance, for even a minor surgery, or let's say, or a dentist appointment or something like that? Just
Great question. The way I usually use it, this is just how I witness. Probably because, I've taken so many math classes. To me, the middle of the graph is the current time, the left side is the past, and the right side is the future. And I just watch where the energy goes. And, it's surprising how much of the healing goes to the future, which I visualize as the right side. So, it probably gets reversed on the camera, but if I see it on the right side of my, looking at it, that's the future. If I see it over on the left, that's the past. In terms of doing healing ahead of a surgery, I think that's a great thing. And that way, I call that a gray area. You could be doing that as manifestation or as healing. And I think it could work both ways. But just a fun story. One of the early healings I did when I was just learning this, I was probably at the level of you guys, if you came maybe in May and you've been coming to the practice groups, I've been doing it for a month or two. And my Aunt Lauren, who was the one who had sent me to Terry in the first place, she was having LASIK eye surgery. And she had asked me, Brent, can you take me and drive me home? I was like, sure, no problem, Lauren, right? Happy to do that, right? That's what family's for, right? And so I picked her up and drove her to the doctor's office. And we're sitting there and they're like, oh, the doctor's running late. We're sorry, we won't be able to see you for about 30 minutes. And we were like, oh, that sucks. But then I'm like, you know what? We got 30 minutes. Why don't we do some digging ahead of the surgery? And that's exactly what we did. So we're sitting there in the waiting room and I'm like pulling on her fingers and such, right? And at the end, we did the healing that she have a quick, effective surgery process with no negative side effects or something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but something like that. And then, a few minutes after we finished, the doctor called her in. And I'm like sitting out there for, 40 minutes or whatever, reading my book. And then when they were done, they called me in to chat with her and the doctor. And what the doctor said with this, yeah, Lauren, when you first came in, I wasn't even sure you were a good candidate. And I was really expecting this to be one of the most difficult, longer, more complicated procedures I'd done. But it was the weirdest thing. Once I got in there, it was almost like your eye was working with me. It kept like turning to exactly the right place. And he goes, I've never seen anything like this, but this was the fastest LASIK I've ever done. And he was just like, this is the weirdest thing. You're a lucky lady, right? And I wasn't going to say anything, but me and Lauren are both like, yeah, we know why, right? Thank you, Terry. So, of course, it's not always that easy. It doesn't always end up that well, but absolutely, I think that might be a good tip for energy healing for another time, maybe a few weeks out. One of the more powerful uses of this that we don't tend to think about is to prepare someone for a medical issue, a medical treatment. That I would absolutely want to do some healing ahead of if someone in my family or a close friend was going to have surgery, for sure. That it's not, there's no guarantees, but I think you're a lot more likely to have a successful procedure with fewer problems and side effects. And I'll just say I did not do any of that before my elbow surgery. Now, it wasn't my fault. I hadn't learned it yet, right? The elbow surgery came first, led me to healing. But yeah, who knows? If I had known Terry, been closer to Terry and done healing ahead of the elbow surgery, maybe the surgery would have been great. And I never would have been doing this stuff. And I'd be, some video game developer. I don't know. Tana, question?
Yes, I've been collecting surgeries the past like 5 plus years,
Yeah.
and
You got the whole set yet?
I almost actually after like three of those surgeries were gynecological, and my doctor, my surgeon was just like, nothing wrong, everything's good. I'm just like, okay, I've never heard that in my life. So it was, but I also did some other modalities and got acupuncture and did a
Sure.
lot. And you guys here were helping me with some of them. And, but my question is that what I really worried, and I didn't care how weird they might thought I was, I was aware of how what is said while we are completely,
Yes.
let's use the word helpless
Yep.
under anesthesia.
Yeah. They're called Engram banks.
Yeah, so my thing was, it's like, I know you guys are going to be discussing things and all, do not say anything bad and nothing, about me, about the surgery, about how things look. Everything has to be positive. You have to get, if you have to, interact by giving eye looks, just, I don't want to hear any, I don't want anything bad while I'm under. And they pretty much were cool and understood that
Yeah.
and stuff. What do you have to say about that? It's like where I've heard that it's like, it's almost like you're in from age to seven again, where you're just
Yeah.
tofu and
It's
everything.
when you're in when you're in the delta state, which is unconsciousness, you're just wide open. And the things you hear go straight into the subconscious, and it can be a bitch to work with because there's no context to it.
Yeah.
That's why they're so powerful. That normally when we have a belief in a memory, it's contextualized. That, for example, I go and drink water from the faucet and I'm fine, and then I go to Mexico and it makes me sick. When you have the context, you realize, oh, that only happens in Mexico. I'm fine at home, right? When you're unconscious from anesthesia, your brain has no context.
Yeah.
So the memories you take on, the beliefs act like a wild card and impose on every context.
Right.
So that this is why clearing the engram banks is a powerful process. And that term, I think it comes out of Scientology. And just so you guys know, I've never been a member of Scientology. They tried to recruit me a couple times. But I have read L. Ron Hubbard's first edition of Dianetics, which was quite interesting. There's actually some good stuff in there. And I mentioned them because they were one of the first to catch on that yes, you pick up another term is free floating memories. Means the same thing. But to my experience, it's absolutely a very real and powerful thing.
Yeah,
And
I marvel at how close Scientology is and the how what they do, how
Yes.
similar it is to Theta Healing
Yes,
Awakening.
it's basically Scientology is kind of an energy healing wrapped up in a big evil soul-sucking cult. But many of their processes, I would say objectively, are quite powerful and innovative. There is good stuff there for sure. Brent's perspective, read the books, learn the content, stay away from the Scientologists. That's just my opinion, right? Your mileage may vary. But yeah, the free-floating memories, the Ingram banks, can be a big deal. And I remember one of my buddies from high school became a plastic surgeon, and I was hanging out with him one day, and he asked me to film a surgery. And I thought it was so interesting because the whole time, him and the anesthesiologist were joking about the golf game they had played the other day. And it was all very upbeat and positive. And I guess someone had taught him that at some point in his medical school. Yeah, don't be sweating bullets. Just keep it happy and upbeat. Talk about fun things, and your patients will get better outcomes. And now he's known as like the Brazilian butt lift master of Southern California. So he's had a huge career. And I think that paying a little bit of attention to the energy in the operating room is a piece of that.
Yeah.
Clearly skill and training and all that matters too, but for sure.
Yeah, and having good music playing, I'm sure helps as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, I hadn't had a surgery. LASIK was my surgery in 2005. That's barely a surgery. And then before then, I
Yeah.
hadn't had surgery since I was 7, so I was terrified of it. But I got much better.
Yeah.
But I just decided I didn't care what they thought of me. It's just like, you only talk,
Yeah.
even if you have the most obscenely gruesome thing you've ever seen, doctors have ever seen, just like, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah. No, it's smart
Yeah.
for sure. I like it. Other questions, comments? All right, posterity, we're turning off the recording. You know, it'd be nice if you did something for us at some point, but that's okay. Yeah.